Thank you so much for joining my academy today, where we teach a lot about health education, different interviews from medical experts and experienced people in the community. And I'm so glad that today you agreed to join me for this special interview. We want to understand more about you. What do you do? And tell us more, basically, what you enjoy doing in your community. So, my name is Winnie Barawa, and I would like to know more about you. What's your name and where you come from?
Okay. Thank you so much for having me. So my name is Talesindano, Nangolo. I'm from Namibia. So in my profession, what I do in my professional capacity is that I'm an associate consultant at a food assurance consultancy, and then the social element is that I raise awareness around chronic health management, more specifically tailored to lupus, because that's the condition that I have, and then also mentoring young girls between the ages of 18 to 20 that are sort of in a space where they didn't qualify to go to university or to further their studies, but are feeling like they're in an identity crisis. And so it's just sort of trying to bring them to a point to make them realize that they have value to bring, and that academics are not always the route for everyone. So there are skills that they might have, or strengths that they possess, that they can maximize on, hopefully monetize.
You've mentioned something that really caught my eyes during our interaction, and you say that at some moment you suffered SLE. And for those who don't know SLE means systemic lupus erythematosus. And Nangolo has had an experience to live through that condition, and she will tell us more of how it has been. So maybe bring us on board, like, when did you start seeing the symptoms, and which symptoms did you actually experience at that time?
Okay, so I'd like to think that my lupus dates back to maybe high school.
Yeah.
So symptoms started showing up sort of here and there. They would show up and then they would diminish. So it wasn't really something that I took seriously.
Yeah.
But I would say the first two really that sort of got me thinking that something wasn't right was extreme shortness of breath, and I had Raynaud's phenomena. So my hands would become really dark, and my feet as well, especially when it's really cold.
Yeah.
And it was just a thing that happened during the cold seasons. So I'd go to the doctor and they're like, unfortunately, there's nothing really we can do. We can just try and manage it. And then fast tracking to the year when I was diagnosed, I got to see that those are actually symptoms as well of lupus.
Okay.
So yeah, I'd say those are like some of the key symptoms really. And so when I finally got to speak to my specialist, when he was asking me, ticking off the list, like, oh, do you have this symptom? I'm like, yeah, no, I have that. Do you have this symptom? Oh yeah, no, I've experienced that. Like I could backtrack how far ago it had manifested. So that's also
So maybe to ask, in your experience now, which symptom stood out strongly of all? Was there a symptom that was repetitive and it kept taking you back to the doctor? And were the doctor able to identify that this is SLE, or there were certain other areas that they couldn't get it?
Yeah, so I think the recurring one in the latter years was the fatigue. I never really understood that it was fatigue in like my high school years, but later on I got to see that the joint pain and the fatigue was the most prominent ones, because it just didn't make sense that I would wake up and I was tired. Like, you're supposed to be fully rested when you wake up. So I think that was one of the key ones that stood out. And then also just general sense of being sick as well. So the doctors could see that I wasn't well, but with the blood work, they couldn't necessarily pick up what was wrong. And so my GP then referred me to a specialist physician in internal medicine, who luckily for me had worked with so many lupus patients before. So it was just a matter of ticking off and doing a renal biopsy to confirm that I had lupus.
Wow. So were there specific tests they did on you that maybe you could remember? And what they said were for that particular time?
Okay, yes. So there were a series of tests, but the ones that I sort of remember is the constant blood work. They kept doing the same tests over and over. So they were testing, I think they'd even done like one of them that they kind of do a rapid test for autoimmune disease, but I think at that point they didn't pick it up, so the doctor kept doing that repeatedly. But then when he started suspecting that I had lupus, then they would be doing a lot of CT scans, MRIs, just to see that my brain wasn't affected, because that's also apparently one of the things that can happen with people with lupus. And then I'd also say the renal biopsy, obviously, to confirm. And then I think so I think those would be like the key tests that they did, but the blood work was repeated. Like, they pricked me so much.
Wow, so sorry for that.
Yeah.
So many doctors did you see in total until now you ended up getting the right management?
I think
like the different specialties that you encountered?
At the time of my diagnosis, I had seen, I think, 4 in total. So 2 GPs. I'd stuck with one, especially with the GP, and then I had 2 specialist physicians. But one of which was connecting and asking all other specialists as well. So it could potentially be more as well, because the other one was confirming with me that he was reaching out to other doctors just to make sure that he was indeed giving a right diagnosis, because that is also a thing. Some doctors do misdiagnose people with lupus.
So do you remember the specialties, or the words were so difficult?
I think specialities might have been rheumatologist and specialist physician in internal medicine. I think those are the 2 that really stood out for me. There were some that he mentioned along the way, and I was just like, okay, that's too much for me. In any case, I was sort of in a state of confusion, trying to just grasp the fact that I've got this illness now. So just trying to navigate that.
So mentioning the state of now being unable to, kind of like being in denial, how did you overcome that? Because most patients, when they go and mention this disease, SLE, even in any medical facility, you find that most of us as healthcare workers, we read it in our books, but we imagine that we never meet it in Africa. And now here you meet a patient with SLE who herself is also in denial that this condition is with them. So how did you overcome that yourself? And how did you even be able now to blend in with the healthcare workers to start and manage this disease together?
Okay, I think I kind of plunged into denial for maybe a good 6 to 7 months, because first of all, it was a it was so new to me. It's like I was trying to wrap my head around. It's like, how can my body be fighting against itself? Like, what did I ever do to be in a position like this? Was it something that I did throughout the course of my teenage years or my childhood years? And just to find out that lupus has no known cause and there's no cure, so it's kind of something that just happens to you. So I think I was in denial for a very, very long time, but I think also my specialist realized at some point and had a chat with my family just to familiarize them with like what lupus is and what it is that I'm going through. And so being in and out of hospital and meeting different kinds of people, and honestly, I'd like to champion and just shout out my family, because for them, once they understood what was happening, they were ready to sort of onboard and just keep me motivated. Because one thing I've learned about lupus is you are more prone, if you suffer from the condition, you're more prone to depression. Not just from the illness, but from the medication that we take. So I think having my family fully aware of that, they were able to sort of encourage me and sort of just what we say in my language, it's like to sort of encouraged me that, this is not the end of your journey,
Yes.
right? We
Yes.
definitely don't know what lies ahead, but we're going to be with you. So I think that support kind of made it easier to accept my reality and to accept that this is now the illness that I have for life, and I'll manage it with their help and their support. So yeah, I'd say that 6 to 7 months.
So now we are into management, and during this management, like, what were the remedies and the approaches that were done to you until now? Because if right now you tell someone you have lupus, like, I myself couldn't believe when you told me you had SLE, and I was like, this is a disease everyone fears to even hear that either their relatives or themselves have it, because imagining your own body is fighting against your joints, and so your connective tissues are becoming weak and you're not able to put your body in order. So what are this management that you got into, and now here we are improving and getting to be stable again and going to champion for this condition?
Yes, a lot of it stems from my undergraduate degree, because in it, I remember in the last semester I had a module called Disease and Immune Response. So in that, I really got to understand like what lupus actually is from like a scientific point of view and the medication, and so that sparked the eager interest to explore reading journal articles and seeing really what's in the scientific community in terms of lupus and what they're doing. And I was also lucky enough to stumble upon something called the Lupus Foundation of America, and they're doing extensive research, and they have such good material in terms of what lupus is, how caretakers can take care of people with lupus, and how to basically improve the quality of your life. And then just to delve deeper, having that in mind, I then delved into research. And I think it is because of that, and also walking alongside my doctors and the specialist, when I read up about something, I'm like, okay, I think this might potentially work. Can I try that? And then they'd be like, yeah, let's maybe try that. Or they'll be like, oh no, maybe that might have a reaction with your medication. And I think that trial and error over the years, I think 2 years into, after the diagnosis, post-diagnosis, I was really looking into nutrition. And I soon discovered the power of nutrition in terms of managing chronic illness like this. And that's why I'm literally like, guys, like, what you eat is really who you are. Like, we hear it and you're like, oh, it's just fatty stuff, but it really is the truth. I came from a point of taking 19 medication or 19 tablets a day to literally 1.5, as currently, and it's not even every day. It's like 5 times a week and thrice for the half a tablet a week, and basically just finding like the key foods. There are certain key foods and a specific diet that I actually follow, which is referred to as the anti-inflammatory protocol diet. So and just also trying to stay fit. So swimming as well really helps because it relaxes your muscles and there's no gravity in the pool. So there are some people that have experimented that and they found that it really helps with lupus as well.
So it's encouraged that someone who has lupus should go into swimming.
Yes, definitely they should, because there's also something referred to as aerobics swimming, not aerobic swimming, aerobic therapy
or hydrotherapy.
Yes. So it's a kind of therapy because I don't know how to swim. I've had to start, learning how to swim. But even with the learning how to swim, I've gotten to see, like, when I come out of the pool that day, I'm like,
everything is relaxed.
This is why they're saying, because with the joints, and it just works. It just really helps with disease management.
That's beautiful, and I'm so happy that you, despite all that journey, and now you're here championing for SLE in your community and teaching them that this condition can actually be managed, and someone doesn't have to imagine the worst of the worst when it comes to this disease. So tell me about now. You're here, you've had an issue. I mean, you yourself has gone through SLE, you've managed, you're stable, you're back to work, and everything is peaking. When did you now decide, I'm gonna champion for SLE, for people to know about this?
I think it's when I realized the sort of ignorance around the illness, particularly also in the workspace and just with people of our generation. So I'd say because you'd find that someone, especially prior to diagnosis, someone living with lupus, you get comments like, you're just lazy or you're unfit, and you're like, but I really, I wake up and I'm tired and I can't
my
run.
fault.
You see, so I'm like, people really need to know. And because lupus is also classified as a disability, because of the nature of the illness, in that today you could wake up totally fine and tomorrow you're not, it makes it very challenging as well for people to sort of take you at face value, because they're like, no, you're probably just putting another sick day, or you're just pretending, because it works for you. But I think when one raises awareness and people are aware of what a condition is and what the symptoms are and how it can affect someone, I think people are more inclined to be accommodating. For instance, even in my current job, I'm more sort of not limited, but I'm more responsible of like the administrative stuff, so that I'm not doing all the taxing things and the heavy lifting. But that's accommodating me, because they know that if I'm to sort of plunge into that scope of work, then it's strenuous on my body. So I felt that was very important. And also I've seen over the years a couple of lupus warriors pass on, some very young, and I'm just thinking, we need to raise awareness, because currently there is a crazy statistic that from the first symptom until diagnosis, that time span is 6 years. So if people have these symptoms and they can approach their doctors because they are aware of it, then probably they could get early diagnosis, and that means getting on treatment and trying to manage the disease, as opposed to getting to a point where you're on dialysis and soon before you know it, you pass on. So
what positive impact have you seen now since you started your work?
Like I'm saying, accommodating, and people not championing, so to speak, but having more compassion and empathy, and understanding that if I'm telling them I'm tired, I'm tired. And also, if they ever meet someone with lupus, they can equally share that empathy or sympathize with them. Not obviously to the point where like you're not going to do anything, but also just understanding that, okay, this person, we can only go so far with this person because of, unfortunately, the limitations of their body. But then I think also one of those has been seeing my own personal growth, and seeing the growth of many others, when you fully accept and embrace that you've got this condition. Because more often than not, you find that people with chronic illnesses, they tend to make their illness their identity. And so it's almost like, I won't do anything because I got lupus. But I'm like,
no, you can do so much.
Yes. So for me, the approach, and then the approach also that I'd like to sort of pass on to other people with lupus is, I get to do this even though I've got lupus. That's mind blowing. So I think the fact that I'm pushing my boundaries, of course my mom is still like, no, whenever I'm traveling, she's like,
you
please make sure you're wearing your no, she's like, please make sure you're wearing your masks. Okay, are you sure you packed your masks? Okay, did you pack your turmeric? Okay, she's being a mother, and I understand, because she was sort of the person who had to experience the most of it. I was just experiencing it from the stance of I'm in pain and I need to go to the doctor, and I was in and out of hospital. There was a point where I was rushed to the ICU because of drug toxicity. And for her, I got to see that she even lost weight. So like for her, she was in it, because I was almost gravely ill, that it was kind of a thing of, I think she's gonna go today, or she's gonna die tomorrow. So yeah.
Were there moments where you had like autoimmune kind of crisis where the immunity is just gone?
Yes, I'd say did you
Like
did you ask-
crisis where the immunity is not working and there's burst of infections and so on.
At first, yes.
Okay.
Especially when I got diagnosed and the treatment, particularly, was very high. I had severe side effects. So I would have infections, boils everywhere. But I think soon, as I got to understand that,
Proud of you for the work you've done in Namibia. And literally, like I've said, I've never met a patient, I'm not really a patient, but a person who's gone through SLE and they overcome all this. Most of the cases we meet are the way you're saying, it's more of crisis cases, and everybody is like on the end of the spectrum and talking about the worst of the worst. And getting such a positive story from you is really an encouragement, and I believe this session is going to change so many people out there. And so I want to give you the last chance now. Like, do you have any word of motivation or any word of encouragement to either a patient who is also going through SLE, and how best do you wish them to view the condition?
okay. I think the key thing, having suffered and
You
gone
can address
through,
the camera there.
Oh, yes. I think, especially through the years in which I was diagnosed until now, the key thing that I would like to say is it's not your fault that you've got lupus. Secondly, lupus is not who you are, it's just a part of who you are. So the sky is still not the limit. So you can go ahead and just try to see what it is that you can achieve. Obviously trying to not totally disregard the fact that you've got lupus, but to somewhat cherish it and have the mindset that, oh, I get to do this even if I've got lupus. It's more of a it's not a can I do this, but more like I get to do this.
Yeah.
And then secondly would be in terms of management, would be make sure you've got a supportive system. And I know not everyone has got the privilege of that, but if you've got like a family member or a friend that can just be with you, to just help you and to sort of be your warrior as you're going through this, because I know that lupus is not something you manage on your own. Lupus is a condition that you definitely need people, and I remember days where I was incapacitated and I was just like, there's absolutely no way I would have been able to do this by myself. I've had people that to carry me to the bathroom and learning how to walk again and doing all of these things. I wouldn't have done it by myself.
Yeah.
But I would really like to encourage you to say, okay, one of the key things to manage lupus would be nutrition. So there's something called the anti-inflammatory protocol diet, and I feel like that is a key thing. And also making sure that you are doing all of this research in parallel with consultations with your doctor. So if you, let's say, end up reading about this thing and you're like, okay, I think this might work, just pass it through your doctor to just confirm that it won't react with your medication. Because one thing that I've realized over the years is that it's not a one size fits all for lupus people. So I might be on this treatment and someone else would be on a different treatment or a heavier treatment. But I would like to encourage you to say that there is a brighter side on which I am. So it's not always going to be like you have flares and you're suffering from chronic fatigue, because I suffer chronic fatigue, or even fatigue, maybe every 2 months or sometimes 3, 4. It's not a constant thing. It's not as bad as it used to be. So I just want to encourage you that there is a brighter side. You just have to be very intentional about seeking out chronic health management and doing it congruent with seeking out your doctor, and obviously seeking out pages that do all this awareness, like my page, which is The page is titled Invisible Lupus because it is an invisible illness. So yeah, I think in a nutshell, that is my advice to anyone with lupus.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So today's interview has been with one of us. She's called Nangolo from Namibia, and she has talked about her experience with lupus and how she's been able to overcome it. And I'd like to give her a chance to tell us which handles do we follow, or do we contact you?
Yes, I think I'm not really a social media person because I feel like it gives me anxiety and I try not to stress. So I try to just focus on what I feel I need to do. But if you would like to contact me, especially if it's someone who's got lupus, I'm always very, very keen.
Thank you.
I am on Instagram at Invisible Lupus. And then I don't have any personal pages, so I think currently that would be the one place. And if you actually contact and DM me on that platform, then I definitely know you're someone suffering from lupus. So I will give it high priority because I'm actually active on that page.
Thank you. So thank you so much, Nangolo. I'm so proud of you, and I'm so encouraged to see the work you're doing and embracing this condition that so many people are still afraid of. And to my team, I welcome you more to our channel. Keep watching the content we share, and if you really believe in the work we are doing, kindly you can subscribe and share the page with each and every person in your cycle. Thank you so much, and see you next time. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.